Donna here from the Everything Saxophone podcast. We're here live at NAMM, the NAMM Show 2022. This podcast is being sponsored by Legere Reeds. We're right in front of the American Cut sign right there. Awesome 3.0, Legere Reeds. I'm here with Jeff Antoniuk. This is a follow-up interview because I interviewed him at NAMM. Was it two? Yeah, it was 2020.
That was shall be spoken about. Right, exactly. Yeah.
So 2.5 years. So Jeff, I just saw you walking around and I'm glad that you stopped by. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, great to see you again. It's so much fun seeing people that, of course, we haven't seen in 2.5 years.
Yeah, for sure. So now we were just talking about the fact that Jeff is now using the Legere Reeds. So let's talk a little bit about that. What reeds were you using before? What made you decide to, use Legere?
Yeah, well, I played cane for 35 years, and I was most recently using Gonzalez reeds. These cool reeds from Argentina, and I sort of fell into using them and got into a cool relationship with the company, and I liked them. They were just, everything else was getting tricky for some reason. I was having a hard time on the mouth, good mouthpieces. I don't know what it was. With, the previous brands, Gonzalez were working great for me. And so I've been just hearing from so many people who I really respect, students of mine that sound fantastic, they're playing Legere. And I'm not so much a purist that I'm going to insist on my life being miserable forever with cane reeds. So, over the decades, I've tried what comes out, and it's just never worked for me. I sound like a kazoo, and that's been that, right? So I tried some of the signature and American cut, and this is going back to 6 months ago, December 1st, I remember saying, I'm going to put this on my mouthpiece and not take it off for 3 months because, even if I felt like it's not working, I wanted to give it time. And so 3 months went by and it was kind of working and I didn't want to go back. So essentially I haven't put a cane reed on my tenor since December 1st. It's now June 1st. And I'm, really happy with how it's working. And at the very least, I'm going to play Legere a lot, if not, entirely, because it's really getting done what I want to do. So.
Wow. So, okay, a couple of questions. Signature or American cut, and what strength?
Yeah, I'm playing American cut. The signature didn't quite work for me. American just kind of sang right out of the box. And I've been playing 3.5s forever. And so 3 1/4 is a little hard. 3s are a little soft. So somebody told me a really great trick how to soften up the reed a little bit. I double checked it with Sean here and he said, yeah, that's a thing. So great sax player, Pete Barenbreg, a friend of mine, said if you boil some water, dip the reed in super fast because you can't undo it, dip it in, it will soften the reed just a little bit. So with a 3.25, I may do that, play it for a while, next day, so I might dip it in, for half a second, and it sort of gets to the strength I like. Have you heard about that soften the reed thing? You're
gonna laugh. Okay, so I interviewed the guys here. I interviewed Chris from Legere, and we spoke about that yesterday, that exact thing. And so what he did say, well, first of all, I also asked him too, hey, we can play in 109 degrees heat here, no jokes. Palm Springs 120, would that have any effect on the reed? He said no, after he told me about the boiling the reed trick. But what he did say was that you can't undo that. So like you just said, I like the way you said it, you dip it in really quick and get it out. And I think he said the whole reed. So yeah, so just be careful with that. I would say just do it once and just let it, try it out, let it sit for a little bit. And then I was just speaking with Danielle Walker at Jody Jazz. Sometimes, it's not all the time. Sometimes the reed takes a while to wear in. So just, with some of the reeds, if it's not working right away, play it a little bit, play it the next day, and then it's going to eventually wear in.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. And I'm, just fascinated with the technology moving ahead. And, as horns get better and more in tune and mouthpieces, are just getting so precise and we can dial in the sound we want that, to save how many 100 hours a year of my life from farting around with reeds, it's a big deal.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And you know what the cool thing is, too, with the Legere Reeds as well? ReedGeek, who I interviewed also here at NAMM, his tools you can alter the Legere Reeds as well. If you feel like you want to tweak them, you can do it, and Mauro at ReedGeek.com, and also on YouTube has videos on how to do that if you wanted to. But most of us that go to, like synthetic reeds, we do it because we just don't want to have to tweak them. Sometimes we have to, but we just want to just put it on and just play, right?
Right. Well, and that's what I did, for years, long before ReedGeek, and still to this day, I would use a reed knife to flatten the bottom of the reed so it sits on the table of the mouthpiece. Like I don't think I've ever one day in my life put a reed on without flattening the table first. That's just a ritual of mine. I drink coffee, I flatten the back of the reed. Those are two things I do before anything. So to not have done that for 6 months is bizarre. So I'm just drinking more coffee to make up for it.
That's awesome. I love his dry humor. And he's like this you're like this on your videos too. That's why I love it. That's so great. Okay, cool. Well, listen, let's catch up. During COVID, how did that, you gig all the time, but you've got JazzWire, you've got other things, but how did you deal with, the time during COVID?
Yeah, so like for all of us, scared to death in how am I going to pay my mortgage and everything else. And thankfully, I was able to pivot my real world teaching, which is mostly small groups, onto Zoom. So, of course, how do you teach a small group on Zoom? So, of course, the latency was untenable. I've been working with JackTrip and low latency, but the bottom line is that wasn't going to work in a truly replacing a small group kind of way. So came up with a great way of essentially doing group lessons on Zoom. And so I have 16 small groups that meet regularly. So all those groups, we did 4 camps, 2 summer camps, 2 winter camps, and then I produced 50 one-day workshops, all on Zoom. So I had never taught a Zoom lesson, Facebook lesson in my life before. I didn't need to, I didn't want to. COVID hits, so it's interesting in that it opened up a new aspect of my business. So this summer I'm doing, for the 19th year, it's been called Maryland Summer Jazz for a long time. We've rebranded it as the JazzWire Jazz Summit, Summer Summit, I should say. And so that's happening in the Washington, D.C. area. But we're doing an online version of it for all the people around the world that can't come to the D.C. area this summer. So if people want to know more about it, if you go to JazzWireSummit.com, and you can sign up for the online portion. That's our first session. I want to say that's July 15th through 17th. Or the in-person session, we still have a few spots, July 20th through 23rd. So back to your question about COVID, I had to get creative, right? And that's what jazz musicians do, I guess, is be creative, right? It didn't feel very comfortable or fun to get creative over, like, how am I going to keep wheels on the cart? But this ability to connect with people around the world and try to find a meaningful way, not here's how I used to teach, but worse way, right? I really spent a lot of time in, okay, Zoom is this, or the latency is this. What are there good sides to it? And I found there are good sides to interacting online. So how do I optimize the good sides? How do we either downplay or just get rid of stuff that doesn't work? So in time, group dynamics, that just is not going to happen. So we put that aside for that time. But there were things that we really could pull to the fore that don't work well in a room together with 8 people in a small group. So we really worked on that. So that was interesting, and that there are things that I'm keeping as we go ahead. So that was cool. And JazzWire, which is my online subscription site, and we have people from 25 different countries, all instruments on JazzWire. That kept me sane. Because each week on JazzWire, I teach 3 lessons at 3 ability levels, 3 different songs. So this week, what are we doing? The intermediate red community is working on the song Wave. The green community, the novices, are working on a Hank Mobley blues called Dig Dis. And the blue community is working on a Jim Hall tune called Careful. Really cool angular melody. So through COVID, no gigs, can't leave the house. I had to stay engaged and playing at a good level to be teaching, so I really had to practice because, on Wednesday, I'm recording these videos and I have to blow on these tunes. I have to do this stuff. So I had so many friends who, you know, we're losing momentum with practicing because there was nothing to practice for, and getting, of course, depressed. And I was just so thankful that I had this community of hundreds of people around the world to show up for. Just selfishly, just for myself, I was so happy to have something to work for every day, you know, because so many of us had nothing to work for many days, right? So
yeah, you know what people also don't realize? They just think, oh, you know, these saxophone players, they just shoot a video. You don't realize how much preparation goes into that, how much practice, because we're shooting a video, you know. And not to say that when you do a live gig you're not preparing. No, I'm not saying that at all, but people tend to think it's less preparation when you're doing it online. That is not the case, right?
Oh, for sure, for sure. And there's the mechanics of how we produce this thing. And, you know, yeah, we can stop and restart, but I pretty much don't do that. You know, when I'm playing a solo or teaching a lesson, it's beginning to end, no editing really. So I do want to treat it like it's a live gig. But like you say, I treat every gig really seriously, and especially if on a live gig, hey, of these 20 tunes, this song is the one we're going to talk about. I want you to listen hard to. Well, holy crap. Yeah, I'm going to practice for that, right? So, yeah, so thank you for the question about, you know, kind of COVID and all the ups and downs. And, you know, I just am so thankful to the JazzWire community that they were there to help me stay sane. And of course, JazzWire is what gave these people something. So, you know, JazzWire is all about a community. So it was so nice that this community got to stay together and keep everyone sane. And JazzWire predated COVID, so it wasn't a sort of knee-jerk reaction to COVID. It had been running for a year already, so it was very cool to have it go through this sort of experiment of COVID and see, you know, that it really works and how powerful it is.
You know what's interesting? I know a lot of people talk about Zoom fatigue and they're like, oh, I'm so sick of Zoom. Let me tell you something. If COVID happened in like 1999, we would all be in trouble. Really, we would all be in trouble. I think Zoom saved a lot of people. And I know for me, I really enjoyed seeing my own students and my own groups online. It was like I'm seeing human beings. Yes, I'm not live with them, but I'm seeing human beings. That kept me sane too.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I know. I can't imagine what this would have been like before the internet, before we could, you know, just Netflix and ordering things from wherever, Amazon or wherever, right? Like, it would be unthinkable, right? We would have been in the dark ages. So, yeah, right. Thanks to technology for sure. And this is, you know, I tell people, you know, I blow into a brass cone for a living. So I'm just barely one step above like a caveman. So I'm not really Mr. Technology, yet here I am running, you know, ed tech is sort of what I do, right? Education for adults in the technology sector. So it's kind of odd that, you know, that's where I find myself, but I love it.
I'm going to say this. He's a great teacher. I see a lot of his videos. I learn a lot. No, I think you're an awesome teacher. Now, I want to jump back to, this is interesting. You mentioned JackTrip. It's one word, JackTrip. It's not software, it's hardware. That this group has been around for a little bit. They're trying to get rid of the latency issues when it comes to online recording. I know I just met with them yesterday here, and they have ads in the SBO magazine and all the music ed magazines. Essentially, like, JackTrip is where, let's say I was back in New York on Long Island and you're in Maryland. We could conceivably use JackTrip and we could jam together, and there would be very, very minute amount of latency, and latency is where it's that delay, it's that irritating delay. So JackTrip essentially tries to eliminate that, but they have a 500-mile border, window and stuff like that. I know they're going to try to improve that, but you mentioned you used it a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. So I got pros together, and we used JackTrip. And as you say, at this time, about 2 years ago, there was specific hardware. They were very specific. You had to have this box, you had to use this mic and this cord to really reduce latency. So actually now it's app-based. You don't need the box. So they've changed it a lot. So I'm excited to experiment with that. Yeah, JackTrip is out of Stanford University to begin with. So it's a pretty big deal. They're doing really great work. I attended a concert that they did yesterday. They had a string quartet and piano live on stage, and then a 40-voice choir spread all over California, Northern California to Southern California, 400-mile distances, 40 people online, 5 people in the room, all mixed through a big sound system. And it worked. Like it was pretty impressive. So yeah, to get a quartet, a quintet playing together, that's really the holy grail. And so JackTrip, we're going to be integrating it into JazzWire. So for those people that come in and subscribe on JazzWire, JackTrip is going to be something that is inside our platform. So that's going to be exciting. When that's really ready for prime time, it's going to be great.
That sounds amazing. And you know, I was just thinking in my head too, look at all the stuff that's come from the pandemic. Everybody's like, oh, the pandemic. But you know what? A lot of great things came from that. I wouldn't be surprised. We're 2022 right now. I bet you in a few years, also with the metaverse and all that kind of stuff happening, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe there's some kind of like, we have the put on these headsets and it's like we're in the room, or, you know, the latency is diminished to such an extent that it's barely noticeable, even more so, and they are able to go not 500 miles, but 1,000 miles, 2,000, maybe across the country. I think that's going to happen.
Well, in JazzWire, we're working on that technology. We're researching, so, you know, having an Oculus headset on, right, virtual reality, and your avatar is in the room with, you know, 4 other avatars from wherever around the country or around the world, and you're hearing each other in absolutely high-quality lossless audio, which JackTrip already has. The idea that your avatar is moving around a virtual space, that's old technology. Online gamers do that all day long. So it all exists. So it's really a matter of putting it together. And, you know, the laws of physics, unfortunately, are kind of solid. So it turns out the speed of light is a little slow for this kind of stuff. So to have the bass player in Tokyo is kind of an issue because the speed of light is too slow. But they're going to figure out a way to cheat it. You know, the tech guys are going to work it out. Like you say, whether it's 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, it's absolutely coming. So with JazzWire, you know, like I said, we have hundreds of people around the world, and these are folks that are eager for good information, curated information, but the community. Like information, it's all out there, right? Like we can figure out what a half-whole diminished scale is pretty quickly on YouTube somehow. But that ain't the deal. What do we do with that scale? Okay, so that's the curation of the information. But then who cares? You're in your basement in Spain or France or wherever you are playing this scale. That's no fun. You need to be doing it with other people or talking about it with other people, right? I mean, that was my experience at the University of North Texas. I was lucky enough to get to go to a great school, like so many out there. But, and nothing against any of the teachers or professors or classes, but that's not what I remember about North Texas. I remember hanging out with my friends, getting my butt handed to me in a rehearsal, being inspired to go home and practice, hanging out and having a pizza and talking about how Hank Jones sounds different than Tommy Flanagan. That's where I learned about this stuff, the community. It wasn't classes and PDFs and videos. It was talking to other human beings. And as you said, we can do that so well online now. That's what JazzWire is built on, and we're going to keep embracing the technology as it comes because it ain't going to stop, and it shouldn't.
No, it's just going to get better. And I was just thinking about your example with the bass player in Tokyo. It's not going to be a walking bass; it'll be a running bass.
Well, right, yeah, exactly. So at this point, right, we're going to have to work on that. Yeah.
Just joking. It's so funny. Now, listen, what else do you have coming up for 2022?
Yeah, so in July we were talking about the JazzWire Summer Summit. For years I've wanted to do a winter workshop in Florida. And so I'm working on that right now. So actually, you folks out there, we're looking for a venue. And I've got a bunch of leads on a venue. We're looking at specifically the Sarasota area, you know, the West Coast, maybe down to Venice, but that sort of area. And so we're looking for a home. And we're interested in doing a combination of big band and small group for this. And this will be in the winter months, January, February, March of 2023. So that's sort of coming up. So so through the rest of the year, I'm looking forward to the summer workshop. And with JazzWire, we're doing a really nice push and really trying to scale because JazzWire was built to... I don't know if you guys know what a fax machine is. Do you know what a fax machine is? This is like dinosaur kind of level stuff. But 2 people having a fax machine wasn't really great. It's cool technology, but 2 people no good. When 2 million people had a fax machine or 200 million people that's better, right? The more people that use it, it doesn't get watered down, it gets better. And so that's kind of how it is with JazzWire. So we're really excited about scaling and finding the next 500 people, the next 1,000 people to join us, because the conversations get richer. So we're putting a lot of energy into sort of finding those next people. And then what we want to do at JazzWire is bring it into the real world, right? We want to take the online stuff and bring it to the real world. So for the summer program this summer, we have people coming from all around the world to the DC area to meet in person for the first time, which is going to be incredible. People that we got each other through COVID, and now this guy's from Germany and she's from Australia, and we're going to meet in the real world. So I'm excited to create more programs around the United States and Europe where we can bring people in to JazzWire from the real world projects and have the online people meet in the real world. So how this all echoes back and forth is the exciting part to me.
That's awesome. This sounds so exciting. I got to tell you. Listen, Jeff, I'm so excited for you. I'm glad that you stopped by.
I was so thrilled to see you as I was walking by. That's great.
Cool. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.